You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. We're going to make television and radio history. Gary Lineker has been suspended by the BBC and the staff at Match of the Day have gone on strike. So I will be presenting a special brand new show on GB News, The Alternative Match of the Day. My co-host is none other than Patrick Christie's. That is at 10. We've got top football pundits, all the action, great analysis, and so much more. The Alternative Match of the Day at 10, but lots more before then. At 9 o'clock, My Big Opinion, in which I'll be dealing with Gary Lineker. All of his millionaire friends are queuing up to support him, demonstrating how out of touch they are with British public opinion. We start with the People's Hour, your video calls, and media legend Mike Porky Parry. Lots to get through, but first the headlines.
Mark, thank you very much and good evening. Your top story this evening on GB News. The Prime Minister says he hopes the BBC can resolve its row with Gary Lineker in a timely manner, but the dispute is not something the government should get involved with. It comes after Mr Lineker was forced to step back from Match of the Day over a tweet criticising the government's migrant policy. BBC Director General Tim Davie has said he won't resign over the row. It comes after the broadcaster and Mr Davie have both apologised and said they're working hard to resolve the situation. Several commentators, including Ian Wright and Alan Shearer, have boycotted programming in solidarity with Lineker. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the corporation is in the wrong.
The BBC is not acting impartially by caving in to Tory MPs who are complaining about Gary Lineker. They've got this one badly wrong, and now they're very, very exposed, as is the government, because at the heart of this is the government's failure on the asylum system. And rather than take responsibility for the mess they've made, the government is casting around to blame anybody else, Gary Lineker, the BBC, civil servants, the Blob. What they should be doing is standing up, accepting they've broken the asylum system and telling us what they're going to do to actually fix it, not whinging on about Gary.
In other news, Jeremy Hunt has told GB News he wants Britain to have the most competitive business tax rates amid calls to scrap a planned hike in corporation tax. Ahead of the budget on Wednesday, the Chancellor spoke to Esther McVey and Philip Davies on his plans to deliver growth and tackle inflation. He said the corporation tax increase from 19 to 25% would still leave the UK with a lower rate than nearly all major rivals, but he said he was committed to previous promises of bringing corporation tax down.
What we now have is a responsible outlook for public finances. The markets have recognised that by bringing down mortgage rates, interest rates, and we're on track to bring inflation down. But if you're saying to me, as a Conservative Chancellor, do I want to bring down taxes? Well, I want to bring down personal taxes because that is at the heart of what being a Conservative is. But I want to bring down business taxes even more.
Well, some breaking news to bring you in the last half an hour. A 29-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of terrorism offences after a woman was stabbed outside a leisure centre in Cheltenham on Thursday night. The woman was attacked at around 9:15 p.m. She sustained severe injuries and was taken to hospital for treatment, where she remains in a stable condition. More on that story as we get it. Now, West Midlands police have said a man has been stabbed to death at a nightclub in Walsall. Officers were called to Felicia's nightclub in the town centre just after 5 o'clock this morning after receiving reports that someone had been stabbed. The man was pronounced dead around an hour later while being taken to hospital. Officers say no arrests have yet been made. They're urging anyone who was in the nightclub at the time to come forward. TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's over to Mark Dolan tonight.
Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight, a special programme. We are making television and radio history. Gary Lineker has been suspended by the BBC and the staff at Match of the Day have gone on strike. Well, they're in the public sector. Of course they would. Therefore, as a matter of national duty, I have decided to present a special programme. It's called the Alternative Match of the Day. I've put it together with my team in an afternoon. I'm not charging £1.3 million to present it, but it's happening at 10. My co-presenter is the gorgeous Patrick Christie's. We've got top sporting experts and, of course, all the action from today's Premier League. The Alternative Match of the Day from 10. Before that, all of your favourite elements of the show, including the People's Hour, in which I'll be taking your video calls on the big stories of the day. Tonight, the stars of the show are Alan, Sue, Andrew, Susan and Fergus. And the topics tonight: are BBC stars entitled to free speech? Is Rishi Sunak's small boats bill a game changer? And should we defund the BBC? My Saturday sidekick for the first hour of the show is broadcasting legend Mike Porky Parry. And after 9, in my big opinion, the Gary Lineker story reflects how the media and political elite are wildly out of step with British public opinion. Wanting to stop the boats and end a criminal enterprise does not make you a bad person. In the big question, this week reports show that sales of electric cars have fallen, with stiff competition coming from cheaper priced and, in the view of some, more convenient options like hybrid and even, dare I say it, petrol and diesel models. So has the bottom fallen out of the electric car market? And at 10, it is the Alternative Match of the Day. You won't want to miss it. Fireworks to come, a busy 3 hours. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. It's 8 o'clock, it's Saturday, let's have some fun. Put something cold and fizzy in the fridge or fire up the kettle and let's get to work. Now, as I've mentioned, Gary Lineker has been suspended by the BBC following his remarks about the migrant crisis and drawing parallels with Germany in the Second World War in terms of the government's language around the issue. Half of the staff at Match of the Day have gone on strike, which means that Match of the Day tonight is 20 minutes long. And it's basically a couple of goals and that's it. Blink and you'll miss it. Well, the Alternative Match of the Day is an hour long and it will feature broadcasting and journalistic legend Mike Porky Parry. Mike, you'll be with us after 10 for a bit of TV and radio history, the Alternative Match of the Day.
I am going to be delighted to be there because I think that, to be honest, having been a fan for 55 years of football, nearly 65...
Evertonian, the Toffees?
Evertonian. Went to my first match at Goodison when I was 7 years of age. That's over 60 years ago.
Yeah, 1879, I think, was the year. Am I right about that?
1878 was the year that Everton were founded, so it wasn't 1 year after then. But I think I've got every right to report to you, you know, as the top man tonight at 10 o'clock on how the football fans are feeling about the game and whether or not we actually need these experts to interpret what we're all watching.
Well, listen, you were an innovator in Fleet Street, breaking political stories, breaking royal stories when you were in charge at PA.
Yes.
You broke the news to the world that Diana had tragically been killed in a car crash in Paris.
Sadly, I did.
You innovated the back pages at The Sun and The Express and elsewhere, the football coverage, which, as you know, back in the day, that is how you sold papers, with the back page.
I actually, sadly, called, you know, the England manager a turnip. I'm afraid that was
me. Yours, Graham Taylor, which, of course, was front page as well as back page.
It was.
News,
it was.
That famous graphic.
And unfortunately, that was me, and I'm not proud of that, believe me.
Did you ever make peace with Graham Taylor
I
about
did.
that?
I did. About 4 or 5 years later, Graham Taylor and I did a radio show together. I didn't tell him that I was the innovator of the turnip.
Kept that quiet.
I'm putting his face inside a turnip. I never told him. He never asked. We got on very well.
Was a real gentleman and is much missed. So here we are. The Beeb are in the doo-doo. Have they handled this badly?
Well, do you know what? I've known Gary for quite a long time. In 1986, he scored 40 goals for Everton Football Club, my team, in one season. And do you know what? We didn't win the championship that season, as it was called then. We won it the season before, and we won it the season after. Gary scored 40 goals. We lost it by 1 point in that season. But he was a fantastic and terrific footballer. In 1990, that was, by the way, 86. In 1990, we all go off to Sardinia because England had such a bad reputation with fans' behaviour. The Italian authorities put us on Sardinia to play our group games off the, you know, the mainland of Italy. And we were all staying in a place called the Forte Village. Not just the England team, but all the press as well. We all used to mix in those days. And do you know what? In those days, you could mix with the players, you could talk to them, you could see them, even have a drink with them on a day off. I never heard Gary Lineker express one single political opinion. He was just a nice young guy. Now, this current row, I think something that nobody's yet brought to the fore is this. I'm not that bothered about BBC protocol, because that's up to the BBC to do what they want and deal with their stars. I do think it's outrageous to pay a man who basically edits the clips and the captions on Match of the Day, £1.35 million of my money, because obviously I'm a BBC licence fee payer. I think that's a ridiculous amount of money, because lots of people could do it equally as well for a lot less. But the point I'm making is this. The reason I'm so upset about this is his initial tweet statement, which said, he accused the British government of using language that is not that dissimilar to that used by Germany in the 30s. That is an absolute outrage. When Hitler took over in 1933 and the brown shirts came to power, their first statement was, "We will unite all Germans along racial and ethnic lines." Gary Lineker says it's similar to what the Germans said in the 30s. Is Mr. Lineker a student of Germany in 1930? Because if he is, he will know about the most infamous night in German history called Kristallnacht. Now, Kristallnacht happened in 1938, Gary. If you're watching, I'm sure you will be, because you'll be interested.
And he's not working tonight.
He's not working tonight. Kristallnacht was the night that German people were encouraged to go out on the streets and smash the windows of Jewish shops, smash the machinery in Jewish businesses, smash the windows of the homes of Jewish people, and give them a choice. Either get out of Germany or you won't like it very much when you're here. That was the start of a government-based plan. This is the German government, by the way, and he's trying to compare us, the British government, to the German government, that then went on the biggest mass murder campaign in history of 6.6 million people in an attempt to wipe out the Jewish race. I find it so offensive that Gary Lineker can compare what the Germans and their leaders, led by Adolf Hitler, said in the 1930s to what we're trying to do in this country today. They murdered 6.6 million people. We are trying to save lives. We are trying to stop people drowning. We're trying to stop people giving all their money to the evil people who give them a boat to come across the channel. So we're trying to save lives. The Germans murdered 6.6 million people when Hitler was in charge, and Gary Lineker tries to compare us to them. It's absolutely outrageous.
I agree with you, because it's interesting. Amid all of the drama and the hysterics and all of the sort of opprobrium on both sides, of course, Keir Starmer is foursquare behind Gary Lineker, which is not surprising. That demonstrates to me how out of touch Starmer is with British public opinion.
I totally agree.
The topic of my Big Opinion at 9. But you know, obviously he's been very political, and he's made many statements about Brexit, about the government's policies across a range of issues, including the migrant crossings. But these comments invoking the Second World War and the Holocaust, that is potentially very insulting to Jewish people.
Of course
I had a Jewish journalist, Nicole Lampert, Daily Mail on Sunday writer, on this show, in a video that went viral, in which she said, you just don't do that. And she said that the moment you start referencing Hitler or the Nazis, you've lost the argument.
Of course you have. You've completely lost the argument. See, I think Gary Lineker, how can I say this? I'm not accusing him of anything, but he kind of wanted to be popular, do you see what I mean? Now, when you start working the BBC, despite Alistair Campbell coming on the telly 15 times a day and saying, oh, well, the chairman of the BBC was a Tory donor, oh, come off it. You know, the BBC have had Labour donors down through their history, haven't they? Greg Dyke being one of them, OK? No problem at all. But the point is, they're generally believed to be of left-wing persuasion. And I think Gary might have thought, right, this is my biggest paycheck. I want to sound a little bit like all the people at the BBC, so I'll start trying to get sort of popular with populist kind of views.
It could be that, or it could be what Elon Musk says, the owner of Twitter, that Gary, like many great public figures, has been infected with the woke mind virus.
Well, he could have been.
He's woke positive.
Well, he is woke positive. Do you remember a few tweets ago he said, you know, how racist it was to identify 20-year-old men trying to pass themselves off as 12-year-old children? He said that was racist.
There you go.
Didn't he?
You know, it's really tricky. Now, literally, we talked about your time in Fleet Street. You've also been an innovator in broadcasting. You co-founded TalkSport with Kelvin Mackenzie, which is, I think, one of the most successful speech channels in the country.
It's the world's biggest sports news station.
There you go, and they do a good job. And you co-founded that enterprise, and therefore, you know, that platform is very much about people expressing their opinion. But you don't have presenters being overly political. I can't imagine that when you were at TalkSport, you had to fire anyone for their tweets about government policy.
No, I didn't, because what we used to do in those days was say, speak your mind and all that, but you must not be party political, OK? Do you know why? We put ourselves above politics. We were having a laugh and a shout. We were with the people on the street. You've got to remember, most people on the street just want to get on with life. They want to have a beer. They want to go to a football match. They want to watch a movie.
They want to escape, don't they?
They want to escape all that. They don't want politics rammed down their throat. I mean, look, the Gary Lineker thing annoys me so much because he's so arrogant. I mean, the day after this blew up, he came out of his house and told everybody, before he'd heard anything from the BBC, oh, don't worry, it's all OK, I'll be presenting Match of the Day on Saturday night. It must have come as a hell of a shock to him to be told a few hours later, no, you won't, OK? I believe this could be the end of the Match of the Day. In its present form, because let's face it, the audience these days is not what it was when it was at its height.
So you think that the Match of the Day franchise is under threat?
I think Match of the Day as a programme's under threat because if you think... Do you know why? Because when they show the matches that they show, they're far too long. They might show 25 minutes of the biggest game of the day. I can watch the biggest game of the day in 3 30-second clips on my phone. Do you see what I mean? Why would I want to sit there at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night and watch 25 minutes of a game that I can sum up in 3 clips on my phone?
Well,
I think that's a challenge for them.
Well, Porky, we've got to get to the break, but you're part of a a moment of television and radio history tonight. The alternative match of the day.
Yeah.
And we've got punditry, we've got personality. It's a politics-free zone.
Yes.
But when you were at TalkSport, listen, you've written a book about Alan Brazil, who's, of course, a football legend and a great broadcaster.
Yes.
You did have to relieve him of his duties once or twice when you were a TalkSport chief, because he was in Vino Veritas, wasn't he, once or twice?
Well, it's funny you should say that, because we're coming up to Cheltenham week, OK?
Yeah. Blado in Modo and all that.
Blado in Modo. It's Cheltenham week next week, and the first time I had to sort of readjust Mr Brazil's career...
And tweak the schedule a little bit.
Tweak the schedule a bit, was when, on the last day of Cheltenham, which was Thursday in those days, I said, come on, Al, we're leaving the Guinness tent, now we're going home. In a minute, Porky, in a minute, I'll be with you in a minute. He didn't get back till 9 o'clock the following morning. The show was all over. Ken Bates came in and gave us a great interview. Al wasn't there. I'm afraid I had to send him, literally, to the Alps to go skiing.
So I will be asking Mike Porky Parry after the break, as the former boss of TalkSport Radio, would he sack Gary Lineker? That's next, plus your calls. Mark at gbnews.uk is the email. But we're going to be talking to Sue, Fergus, Susan, Alan and Andrew. Are BBC stars entitled to free speech? That's next.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight and the People's Hour, in which I'm taking your video calls. Don't forget, after 10, it is the alternative match of the day, presented by myself and my lovely sidekick, Patrick Christys. Lots to get through, but first we're taking your video calls. in the company of my Saturday sidekick, the wonderful Mike Porky Parry, a broadcasting and radio legend. OK, folks, let's get started. Now, in the light of Gary Lineker's comments about the migrant crisis, many have cited his right to free speech, particularly given the fact that he's not a news presenter. So are those cancelling Gary Lineker guilty of double standards? Do BBC stars have a right to express their opinion on political matters? Sue is in Cheshire. Hi, Sue.
Hi, Mark.
What's your view? Very well. It's great to have you on the show again, Sue. We're always fascinated by what you think. Do we have a right to hear what Gary Lineker thinks about politics?
Well, having listened to everything all day with GB News today, my understanding is that he hasn't actually broken his contract, but he has broken the BBC guidelines. I'm a Conservative member myself, a member of the Conservative Party. His opinion on the
migrant crisis
doesn't bother me, but I'm with Mike on this. That what has really I have found disgusting was his attitude and his comments on what went on in Germany in the 1930s. I think it's absolutely disgraceful. And he should be reprimanded for that.
Let's bring Mike in if we can. We can bring everyone in if you like, Cal. Let's pump up the 4-box and meet the whole group. Whatever you got, Mike.
Absolutely, Sue. Thank you very much indeed. I'm a Cheshire boy myself as well, so it's great to hear you on the show. And Mark, I didn't want to interrupt here, Sue, the point I'm trying to make is that BBC protocol is BBC protocol. They can sort that out. I pay, what is it, £149 every year. You probably do. We want a decent service, sort that out.
I think it's £169. Do you get a discount because you're a celebrity?
I don't know.
It's the Porky discount.
No, it gets paid automatically. Somebody else does that for me.
I think it's £169.
You know what I mean? Is it £169? OK. But the point I'm making, and I will reiterate this again, is the totally offensive language. I think Gary got a bit too clever for his own good when he said language that resembles what was being said in Germany in the 30s. Now, unless Gary has been studying the history of Germany through the decade of 1930 and what happened after that, he's no right to say that anything a Prime Minister or a Home Secretary of the United Kingdom who are trying to save lives of the people who come over the channel in tiny boats trying to save lives, he has no right to condemn and say it sounds like Germany, because, as I've said to Mark already, that led to 6.6 million people being exterminated in a desire by Adolf Hitler to wipe a race off the face of the earth. You can't compare the United Kingdom today with that sort of totalitarian barbarity.
Andrew in Dudley, is that something that bothers you, referencing the Second World War? Because it's important, Andrew, to point out that Gary Lineker has enjoyed a lot of support from several public figures, lots of celebrities, and a big chunk of the public for the stand that he's taking.
Yeah, it does bother me. But before I start, I'd just like to say what an honour it is to be on the same show as Mike Parry. I've got a piece of paper here. It says, a super professional sports commentator and broadcaster, and a credit to his profession. And
very kind of you, thank you.
Thanks for the money, Mike. That's much appreciated, mate.
That's all right. There's more on the way.
Just to get back on subject.
That's enough of that. We don't want his ego any bigger, Andrew.
Say again?
We don't want his ego any bigger.
Well, just to get back on subject, I don't think BBC stars should be entitled to free speech, to be quite honest with you. The BBC, whether you like it or not, is supposed to be impartial. If you go back right to the beginning, when Lord Reith, the first Director General of the BBC, he stated, impartiality and objectivity are the essence of professionalism in broadcasting. I'm sure Mike Parry knows that. So these stars, they must toe the line. You know, they're paid these huge amounts of money to present shows. And you'd think that by being paid £1.3 million, it'd be a case of yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir. You know, they have to abide by the rules that they work under.
However, Andrew, are there not double standards? Because we've had Lord Sugar and other BBC presenters being quite outspoken in the past, and they have not received censure.
I've not heard anything what Lord Sugar has said. Can you just tell me an example of that?
I think he was quite outspoken about the Tory government being useless, and that was about a year ago.
Indeed.
OK, well, in that case, then that should have been a case of making Lord Sugar accountable for his words there.
Yeah, but
I'm quite surprised that he got away with this.
Yeah. Can I just come in there? Lord Sugar wasn't trying to bend political will. Do you see what I mean? Lord Sugar is outspoken. He's a billionaire, so he's very independent. On whichever station he works on, including the BBC, he can make a comment, but he wasn't trying to bend, in my view, political will. Whereas Gary Lineker was trying to bend political will against the incumbent government, which was voted in with an 80-seat majority, and therefore I think it's wrong that it's anti-democratic. The other thing is that people say, oh, well, wasn't Gary Lineker very good at the start of the World Cup in Qatar? He made a statement saying how, terrible it was about the conditions of workers in Qatar. Yes, he did, but he was in Qatar for 3 weeks covering the World Cup, so he had to say something about it. He wasn't standing on the white cliffs of Dover watching people come over in small boats when he made his comment about Germany in the 30s. The point I'm making is that he had no real right to get involved in that story. He had nothing to do with it.
OK.
You can make a comment, but you can't try and bend political will.
Sue, you're not happy about invoking the Second World War, but what about Gary's human rights to express himself?
Well, according to the BBC, he can have free speech, but it can't be party political. And there's lots of things he could have said that would skirt around the political bit, but say what he wanted to say in the first place.
However, Sue, Sue, I don't want to interrupt you, but Lineker might argue that his comments were not political, but humanitarian.
They were political because they were directly complaining about a Conservative government policy. He could have actually said he had sympathy for refugees, etc., but he shouldn't have gone directly against a Conservative policy. That's where he's gone wrong, and also invoking the thing that he did about and upsetting the Jewish community. Well, not just the community, Jewish community. A lot of us are upset about it and angry about it, and none of us are Jews, as far as I know. But I'm not anyway.
Well, Sue and Andrew and Mike, what a fascinating debate. Plenty more to come. Don't forget, it is the alternative match of the day from 10 with myself and Patrick Christie's. But coming up after all of this drama, is it time to defund the BBC? But before that, onto a story that's been slightly overshadowed by Gary Gates. Will Rishi Sunak's new small boats bill be a game changer? See you in 3.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island's story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back to the People's Hour. In my big opinion, I'll be dealing with Gary Lineker and his millionaire friends who are standing foursquare behind him, demonstrating, in my view, how out of touch the media and political elite are with British public opinion. That's my big opinion at 9. I'm not pulling my punches. You won't want to miss it. And don't forget, after 10, it is the alternative match of the day. I'll be presenting an hour of football action and analysis with the top names in the beautiful game. Now, Rishi Sunak will pay France £478 million in a deal to finally bring an end to the small boats crisis. Following crunch talks in Paris yesterday, French President Emmanuel Macron agreed to deploy 500 more officers on beaches where dangerous channel crossings start. And the president announced the opening of a new detention centre to help French border police cope with the masses of migrants being trafficked. In return for the £500 million, France will also form a new highly trained and permanent mobile policing unit dedicated to illegal migration. High-end drones, helicopters, planes and fresh surveillance tech will be used to ramp up intelligence between the two countries. So, will it work? And is the Stop the Boats policy a game changer for Rishi Sunak? I'm delighted to welcome Alan, and we've also got Susan as well, and Mike Porky Parry, my Saturday sidekick. Alan, good to have you back on the show. Is the Stop the Boats policy a game changer?
All I'm hearing is more jaw, and really no action. I mean, they can say what they like, and what's going to happen? Really nothing. These people are coming to this country because they want a better life. And you're not going to stop them with a few gendarmes on the beach. They're going to come here. And then this debate can go on forever and ever. We should be utilising these people coming over. They're coming over, they're young, they're fit, they're healthy, they want to work. We need labour. We need people on the farms, we need hospitality. We could come to some sort of arrangement where we could actually make use of these people. Germany did. Germany let so many migrants go into their country under Angela Merkel, and they went straight into the factories. They were working, they were contributing. Let's use some common sense and let's make use of them and say, we'll train you, we'll educate you, we'll teach you the ways that we live in our society. And if you keep your nose clean for 3 years, we'll give you residency.
OK, now, Alan, what I want to do, I want to see your handsome face. So do you mind shifting your webcam the other direction? There you go. There you go. Your centre frame. Mike Porky Parry, you're gonna get to. Oh, you've drifted. Oh no. There you go.
There you go.
We lost you there for a second, Alan. Let's get Alan framed up if we can, because we do want to see him on Mark Dolan tonight. Mike Porky Parry, help us out.
Alan, you made some very good points there, but you've ignored the fact that already about 500,000 people came to this country last year. I'm talking about net migration, OK? People who come in and people who go.
500,000, size of Liverpool.
Size of Liverpool, absolutely right. And they went through the official channels. Now, you've paid tribute to young, fit men coming across the channel on boats. The young, fit men coming across the channel on boats are nicking a place in this country which should go to somebody who's tried to come here through legal channels. Whatever anybody says, those who come on the small boats across channel are illegal immigrants. You can't reward illegality. You have to say to people, you come here illegal. Now, I agree with you. I'm very sceptical about this, £500 million that we've given to the French. But I have to say, the Prime Minister is trying to do it right on both sides of the channel. He's given speeches and he's introduced legislation which he hopes will get through the court to make sure that people who want to come here know there's a good chance they'll get sent back. The deterrent is easily the best way to do it. But you've got to go over to France and try and stop those getting in the boats in the first place. So I'm impressed with the Prime Minister for the amount of energy he's put into it on both sides of the channel.
Susan, welcome back to the show. Carmarthenshire, great to have you on the programme again. Many would argue that this policy is cruel. After all, you don't just jump into a dinghy and risk life and limb if you're not desperate.
Well, I don't think it's a cruel policy. I think we've got to stop them because you've got young, fit men. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they come from. And most of all, we don't know what their intentions are. Because we do hear that a lot of them disappear into the night. We've heard that they disappear out of the hotels and they go into the black economy and into the underground. And we just cannot have that kid coming and running through the country. They are illegal. It is illegal to enter this country without permission. And if you rocked up anywhere else without any documentation, you would be detained and you would be deported. And what I don't understand is, or however many decades ago it was, that is what exactly used to happen. Everybody keeps referring back to the 1951 convention, and that's why we can't deport people. We were deporting people in the 1970s because if you rocked up into this country and you've got no identification, immediately border control would detain you. They would find out where you were from and you would be sent back. You stood absolutely no chance of staying in this country. And I think we need to go back to those days because not only is it illegal, you've got people like a friend of mine who comes from the Philippines. She's had to go through, I think it's 2 years of tests, doing this, that and the other. It cost her a lot of money to gain legal citizenship in this country. Now, it's not fair on people like her when they just come across the channel. They put them in hotels that a lot of working people in this country would love to go and stay in. You've got people here that are finding things very difficult. And then you've got them coming across the channel. They're being fed. They're being put up nice and warm. The cost of living crisis isn't touching them. And they haven't contributed one single thing to this economy. It is wrong. They are illegal. And it's got to stop.
OK, I mean, Alan, I had a lawyer on last night, an immigration lawyer, who said that we do not take our fair share, that on the continent of Europe they're being swamped. True. And he said we should take at least 100,000. What's your view on that?
Well, I would say more to start with.
Sue, I'll come to you in one moment, Sue. Alan first, then Sue, then Mike.
Mike is totally right. We should be bringing in legal migrants, not illegal migrants. And who's to blame for that? they're not processing the legal migrants. It's so slow, it's taken forever to process them.
It's true.
You know, the fault goes back to the government every time and the civil service. If they did their job properly, then maybe we could get a fair input of people coming into this country.
OK, Sue, briefly, and then Mike.
Well, I think it's a non-argument. I mean, people keep saying, oh, you know, Germany takes so many, France takes so many. We are the most densely populated country in Europe. And that's why we can't keep having them come over, because where are we going to put them? We've got our own crisis here. We've got our own people here who've been waiting a long, long time to be accommodated in a good house. So where are they going to put these people that they keep saying we
also,
need, that let them come?
Sue, I sympathise with what you've had to say. And Mike, listen, you're an entrepreneur. You know about a balance sheet. You know how to crunch the numbers.
Yeah.
And financially, I'm sick of people saying that Britain is a rich country. We're not rich anymore. We've got a national debt of £2.1 trillion. And we're running a budget deficit at the moment, which means that every month more is going out than comes in. We're not rich.
Amazingly, despite all the money that we had to borrow, you know, 300 billion for COVID and all that, we still don't have a national debt the size of Japan or even USA. Sue is a very wise woman, because she made the points that are salient, and that is, percentage-wise, you know, I see people on the telly all the time saying, oh, Germany takes more, you know, France takes more, Italy takes more. No. Percentage-wise, to the population, we take more at about 16% of those who want to apply to come here and our population, OK, on a yearly basis. Also, Sue made the point about the square mileage of our country. We're a very small country, OK? And square mile-wise, we take many more into this country who can fit into our country than Germany, France or Italy. Germany and France are countries twice the size of ours. We do our bit. OK. Welfare state-wise, people come here because they know they get a good deal.
Coming up on the People's Hour, we're asking, is it finally time to defund the BBC in the light of Gary Gates? And by the way, on a statement of facts and a bit of a correction on the detail there, the licence fee is £159, not £169, so I spoke in error there. I've obviously got a direct debit, I don't check it, but I feel poorer every time it leaves my bank account. But should we defund the Beeb? That's next.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236, and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app, and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, nah, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. We are making radio and television history tonight because at 10 o'clock I'll be presenting the alternative match of the day with top pundits and some fantastic action alongside Patrick Christie's. Why am I doing that? Well, because poor old Gary Lineker has been suspended. The staff at Match of the Day have gone on strike. I believe the programme is 20 minutes long now with no presenter. So we're giving you an hour for nothing, and I won't be charging £1.3 million to present it. More like £1.30. Yeah, I'll take an egg and cress sandwich and maybe some Doritos. OK, let's crack on now, and let's stay on the topic of Gary Gate, because Gary Lineker's comments about the government migration plans have stoked considerable anger among many viewers and BBC listeners. So has this row brought the organisation into disrepute? Following criticism of the Beeb's coverage of Brexit, the pandemic and Boris Johnson's 2019 election victory, is it time to defund the BBC? Who should we speak to first, folks? Let's go to Fergus first, and I think Alan is with us as well. So Fergus, Alan and Mike. Fergus, welcome back to the show. Listen, I know you're a creative type. You're an actor, you do voices. Do you think the BBC should be defunded?
My father was first on the BBC in 1947. I love sharing a platform with Passion Parry. It's not Porky, it's Passionate Parry. Oh, my God, sharing a platform with Mike. Oh, I will be watching the show later. OK, my father started working for the BBC in 1947. I started work for the BBC in 1956. He went on till 1986. I went on till 1976. Back then, they had 15 orchestras. One was just training and fought at the Northern Dance and so on. 15 orchestras. They had the Drama Repertory Company, which you may not have heard of, which was actors could join it and go on the radio for 2.5 years with a guaranteed weekly wage, plus you got repeats later. It was huge. You had Mrs. Dale's Diary, which my father was in at times, and we called it Auntie. It was Auntie Beeb. It was our passionate thing. Now, the BBC was, remember what Lord Reith said? Educate, inform, entertain. Those were the three. And the radio presenters had to wear dinner jackets and a bow tie, and the women had to be in smart dresses on the radio, because he said otherwise you're not treating your people, the public, properly.
It was a long time ago.
It was...
I'm sorry, I was saying it's a long time ago. Look, I admire you enormously for standing up for the values of the traditional BBC, but my goodness, it has changed so enormously, hasn't it? You can get everything you want from a day's news and a day's football now in about 3 minutes on your phone. So to have this behemoth called the BBC spending billions of pounds, because that's their budget, billions of pounds, is a complete nonsense, particularly as you can be arrested if you don't pay your tax to fund it.
It's our money, Mike.
Exactly.
Our money. And Gary, sorry, no, I hardly ever watch the BBC. I watch GB News. Why do I love GB News?
Because I'm on it.
Well, yeah, of course, you as well. And Mark. And Dan. No, I'm not going to go through the whole list. But the point is, GB News is paid for by the viewers voluntarily, and the advertising and the incredible bloke who created the station. I've been watching since day one. I was even ready to watch before it started. That's a private company. It's not funded whether we like it or not. You're right, Mike. I don't want to lose my money to Gary Lineker to speak about something which isn't his topic. Now, if Jeremy Clarkson is going everywhere, if David Starkey, and you know how much I love him, Mark, if David Starkey comes on GB News and he talks about politics, he's allowed to. If Rees-Mogg comes on and talks about politics, he's entitled to. That's his job. It's not a football pundit's right to insult the British government now with what the Germans did in the 1930s and 40s just because he wants to keep his profile up. It's what's called, in Wagner's Ring cycle, the arrogance of power. And
I think that's probably a very good expression.
OK, well, look, Alan, there are millions of very happy BBC viewers and listeners. They get documentaries, they get drama, they get sport, they get radio. I mean, look at Radio 2 alone. Some people say that Radio 2 or Radio 4 are worth the licence fee in itself. Millions love the BBC. What's the problem?
If you'd asked me this question a couple of months ago, I'd have said, yes, let's stop funding the BBC. It looks like in the last 24, 36 hours, they've actually shown some backbone. They have reprimanded about the football and all this is the BBC slipped very badly into the left-wing cause. All these lovey-dovey's going on about LBGT, going about gender, stuff the man in the street really doesn't want to hear. They want to hear the news. They want to hear what's going on. Now, the other gentleman there was complimenting the head of GB News. I can take him to task a little bit because I think one of the most outspoken free speech commentators on GB News is Mark Stein. Bring him back. Stop trying to fill his 8 o'clock spot with has-been Tories jumping the Tory ship.
Hang on.
Well, let me, Fergus.
Please, let me come in. Mark Stein is brilliant. I know Mark has supported him, so have I.
I love Mark. I love Mark Stein.
He's fabulous. However, Ofcom will fine GB News millions of pounds and it will disappear. That is the problem. It's Ofcom. It's not Mark's problem. It's not my problem. It's not other Mark's problem. It's because Ofcom is working for the lefty, the anti-COVID lockdown ones and the anti-drug people, which Dan's still bringing up, and lots of people on GB News are still bringing up everything that Mark Stein was thrown out for. Thanks to Ofcom.
Fergus, whilst I've got all of your attention, let me tell you that I've been investigated by Ofcom once or twice. I find them incredibly fair. They don't want to restrict freedom of expression or debate. They just don't want it to be slanted exclusively in one direction. So I back Mark Stein. I also back Ofcom as well. We chose on GB News to be Ofcom regulated, and I think they're reasonable. That might be an unfashionable view,
no, I agree with
but I will defend what they do. I don't think they're against free speech, but I will say that I miss Mark Stein, and he is a hero. So thank you, folks. Look, Fergus smashed it. Susan, Alan, Andrew, and of course, Sue. Mike Porky Parry's back at 10 for the alternative match of the day. Big Opinion next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, nah, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. This evening we are making radio and television history. Gary Lineker has been suspended by his employers, the BBC, and the staff of Match of the Day have literally gone on strike. And therefore, at 10 o'clock, I will be presenting the alternative Match of the Day alongside my brilliant colleague and friend, Patrick Christys. We've got top pundits, goalmouth action and opinion that you could eat on forever. That is the alternative Match of the Day coming along at 10 o'clock. Speaking of which, in my big opinion, the Gary Lineker story reflects how the media and political elite are wildly out of step with British public opinion. Wanting to stop the boats and end a criminal enterprise does not make you a bad person. In the big question, are electric cars overrated? We'll hear from all sides on that one. Plus, Fleet Street legend Kelvin Mackenzie with his take on the Lineker saga. And the queen of showbiz and royal reporting stateside, Kinsey Schofield. So at 10 o'clock, it is our alternative Match of the Day. Can't wait for that. Now, the Match of the Day on the BBC is going to be 20 minutes long. Well, we've got an hour. But before that, lots to come, including my big opinion, which is next. First, the headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you very much and good evening. This is our top story at GB Newsroom this evening. BBC boss
Tim Davie has apologised for disruption to the broadcaster's sports shows, but says he will not resign over the handling of the Gary Lineker row. It comes after Mr Lineker was forced to step back from Match of the Day over a tweet criticising the government's migration policy. Tonight's Match of the Day will only last 20 minutes and feature no commentary, no analysis or post-match interviews. Football Focus and Final Score were also cancelled, with several sports presenters walking out in solidarity with Lineker. The Prime Minister has said he hopes the BBC can resolve the issue in a timely manner, but has defended the government's immigration policy in a statement. In other news, and Jeremy Hunt has told GB News he wants Britain to have the most competitive business tax rates amid calls to scrap a planned hike in corporation tax. Ahead of the budget on Wednesday, the Chancellor spoke to Esther McVey and Philip Davies on his plans to deliver growth and tackle inflation. He said the corporation tax increase from 19% to 25% would still leave the UK with a lower rate than nearly all major rivals. But he said he was committed to previous promises of bringing corporation tax down.
What we now have is a responsible outlook for public finances. The markets have recognised that by bringing down mortgage rates, interest rates, and we're on track to bring inflation down. But if you're saying to me, as a Conservative Chancellor, do I want to bring down taxes? Well, I want to bring down personal taxes because that is at the heart of what being a Conservative is. But I want to bring down business taxes even more.
A 29-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of terrorism offences after a woman was stabbed outside a leisure centre in Cheltenham. The woman was attacked around 9:15 on Thursday evening on Tommy Taylor's Lane. She sustained severe injuries but remains in a stable condition in hospital. The man is currently being questioned by counter-terrorism officers, and Gloucestershire Police says it believes it was an isolated incident. And West Midlands Police have said a man has been stabbed to death at a nightclub in Walsall. Officers were called to Velicia's nightclub in the town centre just after 5 o'clock this morning after receiving reports that someone had been stabbed. The man died while on the way to the hospital just an hour later. Officers say no arrests have been made as of yet. They're urging anyone who was in the nightclub at the time to come forward. TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan tonight.
My thanks to Tatiana Sanchez, who returns in an hour's time. Well, what's happening in an hour? Well, we like to break a bit of ground on this show and on the channel. So we'll be making radio and television history. Gary Lineker has been suspended by the BBC, and the staff of Match of the Day have gone on strike. Their programme, you won't believe this, is 20 minutes long with no presenters and no guests. Well, I feel it's my public duty to entertain the people of Britain, and therefore we will do a special show. It is called The Alternative Match of the Day. I've called in the services of my brilliant friend and colleague Patrick Christie's, and we'll have goalmouth action and top punditry from 10 until 11. It won't cost you a penny. It won't cost you £159, and I won't charge 1.3 million to present it. So welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. A very busy couple of hours to come. Looking forward to many debates. In my big opinion, the Gary Lineker story reflects how the media and political elite are wildly out of step with British public opinion. Wanting to stop the boats and end a criminal enterprise does not make you a bad person. Fleet Street legend Kelvin Mackenzie will be here to tell us what he makes of the story. Have the BBC brought this on themselves? And it's Saturday night, so we will be joined by the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. The Oscars this weekend, does anyone care? And also, how many Gary Linekers are there in Hollywood? I suspect a few thousand. So that's Kinsey later this hour. In the big question, more and more people are turning to electric cars. But are they all they're cracked up to be? We'll debate that shortly. Reacting to the big stories of the day, my all-star panel. Sometimes that's a lie. Tonight it's the truth. TV presenter and showbiz icon Christopher Biggins, deputy leader of UKIP and political commentator Rebecca Jane, and news broadcasting legend John Sargent, who, whisper it, used to work for the Beeb. but then he saw sense and moved over to ITN. Now, I want to hear from you throughout the show. Mark at gbnews.uk. This programme has a golden rule. What is that rule? Well, we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. So for the next 2 hours, big debates, big guests, and always big opinions with the alternative match of the day at 10. But first, this. The elite don't get it, do they? They didn't get it in 2016 with the referendum result. They didn't get it in 2019 with the Boris landslide. And they don't get it now with the migrant crossings, which to anyone with half a brain are clearly an economic, humanitarian and national security disaster. Making a crisis out of a drama, multi-millionaire ex-footballers Alan Shearer and Ian Wright have pulled out of their appearance on Match of the Day in solidarity with St Gary. Even the commentators on Match of the Day, who you've never heard of, and journalists in the tunnel have downed tools. These numpties joining a long tradition of public sector workers going on strike. Whilst the media elite might be patting themselves on the back for taking such a principled stand, all they're really doing is drawing attention to how out of touch they are from reality and from the mood of the British people. Take a look at this rather fascinating tweet from politics professor Matthew Goodwin, who is an expert on the Red Wall. Goodwin has tweeted the following: "Everyday Conservative ministers are on the news saying stop the boats is a win for the Conservative Party. Our national conversation does not reflect the public mood." Even right-on French President Emmanuel Macron thinks it's got to stop too, as he outlined a plan in Paris yesterday with the PM to get this sorted. Is he a bad person too? By the way, Sunak and Macron had quite the bromance yesterday, didn't they? It all got very Brokeback Mountain. I nearly got my tissues out. So I won't take any lectures from millionaire ex-footballers in terms of their woke credentials and their moral rectitude. Premier League footballers? Moral? Do me a favour. A good number of them, like St Gary, employ the very best accountants, with the ever-woke Lineker currently in a tussle with HMRC to get his tax bill down by several £million. They're all incredibly privileged, they're pampered individuals. The likes of Gary Lineker and the well-heeled woke elite don't seem to realise that the public have had enough of the chaotic and tragic scenes on our coastline. And they've had enough of the community impact of migrant hotels, which are costing the taxpayer a cool £7 million a day. Wanting that to stop doesn't make them bad people. You can stand in solidarity all you like with Lineker, who enjoys the secluded comforts of a London mansion. But public anger about how and where people are being accommodated is a real issue, and Sunak is right to do something about it. The problem with these virtue-signalling footballers is, like anyone that pretends to be woke, they seek the moral high ground and they claim the territory of being the nice people. But there's nothing nice about poor, tragic souls perishing in these boats. There's nothing nice about the international gangsters who make millions promising people the lie of a new life in Britain. And there's nothing nice about people in small villages and towns in this country whose lives have been turned upside down by migrant accommodation. Gary and his millionaire mates don't get it. And why should they, given the fact that they don't live in the real world? The great irony is that Lineker's decision to take a strong political stance will hurt his employers more than anyone else in what has been a disastrous week for the BBC. And his decision to spark the so-called culture wars with his contentious tweets will likely harden opinion in support of Sunak's new approach. And far from calling out and vilifying this Conservative government, Lineker may have done his bit to secure them another 5 years in power. This ex-footballer may not realise it yet, but he's scored a massive own goal. It's game over for Gary. Now, what do you think? Many would argue that Gary Lineker has been consistent in his humanitarian views and that he has done a huge amount for charity. He's taken in refugees himself, and he uses his platform to give a voice to those who have none. And there are many top lawyers and other commentators who judge the migrant policy to be deeply unfair, illegal, and they consider it to cast Britain in a deeply xenophobic or even racist light. Lineker's 8 million followers on Twitter and his huge popularity on multiple TV networks would also suggest the public do not have a problem with him combining issues of conscience with his job as a sports broadcaster. That's not my view, but that's the view of many. What do you think? Mark at gbnews.uk. Should he stay in post at Match of the Day? Let's get a reaction now from my all-star panel. TV presenter, actor, comedian and broadcaster Christopher Biggins, the deputy leader of UKIP and political commentator Rebecca Jane, the former political editor of ITN, of course, a BBC News icon as well, John Sargent. And John, I've got to start with you. Am I being a little hard on Gary?
No, not particularly hard. I mean, most of what you say is perfectly true. I think the problem is that he doesn't seem to have the sort of respect for the BBC that people like me had. I worked for the BBC for 30 years, mostly as a political correspondent. And of course, we're very proud of the organisation and very proud, of course, about the impartiality. Now, as news people, we knew that perfectly. We didn't need to be told, oh, don't get involved in party politics. Now, you didn't have at that time all the social media pressures, and you didn't have the feeling that, oh, he represents these people, these 80 million people he's said to represent. So the situation was very different. But in a simple way, he's just being rude and unpleasant to the people who are employing him.
OK, I mean, Rebecca Jane, are we being a little hard on Gary Lineker? He's got millions of fans out there.
Not hard enough, in my opinion. Gary Lineker can sit in his multi-million-pound mansion because he doesn't face the problems that people in this country are facing. And he can chastise us all, but he's completely and utterly underestimating the system. So what's currently happening is we've got migrants who are posing as adults and they're convicted criminals sitting in our children's classrooms. And do you know why he's not bothered? Because he can afford to put his children or former children into private education. So they won't be sat amongst criminals. And let's not forget the case of the 21-year-old who was murdered by an immigrant who was actually a convicted criminal and he'd been convicted of double murder. So Gary can do whatever he wants and says what he wants, but because he's not suffering the effects, and he's completely and utterly, insultingly underestimating the concerns of parents in this country.
OK, Christopher Biggins, what's your view on Gary Gate?
Well, I think that it's such a waste of time, in a way. What we've been talking about all this week is him. What we must get right is the fact that hundreds, thousands of people are dying coming across the water. Now, this is awful. I mean, we see sights of children, adults, men, women, getting in these boats illegally, paying a lot of money to people and dying at the end of it. This can't be right. So what he's saying, I sort of agree with. But I mean, it's not at least he's not saying it at the beginning of his programme about football. Blackpool 2, Arsenal 3, and by the way, what about all the migrants coming across? I think he's saying something which perhaps he shouldn't have said or whatever. But he's got an opinion. Now, I have an opinion that we should do something about the migrants coming over, something very serious.
Yes, look, John Sargent, I would argue it's pretty bonkers that the current BBC chairman was appointed by Boris Johnson after receiving a loan just shy of £1 million. But that's, I guess, a conversation for another day. But that's certainly not a policy I would defend. If you were the DG, if you were in Tim Davies' shoes, how would you deal with Gary Lineker? Would he be going back to Match of the Day anytime soon?
No, I think it's past it. I think it's quite clear that Gary Lineker loves the fact that he's got into this position. He doesn't seem to be, he doesn't seem to be worried about it. He's waving to the crowds in Leicester this afternoon. It's sort of being cheered on. He said he's never felt so much love from his supporters. I mean, so I think he's he's got into his own funny zone, isn't he? The idea of him coming back or saying to the Director General, "Oh, I'm very sorry about this. I will try and make sure that I'm more sensible in future." I don't see him saying that. And I think he will continue to say, "I've got a right to say it." I don't quite know where he thinks his right comes from, but a sort of general idea that freedom of speech should trump everything else, whereas the rest of us, we work for people, we don't always shout out what we feel all the time because of freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is actually something you've got to be quite careful with, and we all are careful in our lives. Not to be incredibly rude or shout about things. No, we live in a society. If you are in the BBC, in whatever form, you've got to be careful what you say.
Especially today.
And to try and get... And the Director General, I thought his performance this evening in the interview was very disappointing. You didn't feel any sense of authority. You didn't think, oh, here's actually someone that's talking tough and knows what he wants to do. At one stage, he said, "I'm in listening mode." He shouldn't be in listening mode. He should be in doing and instructing mode. He's meant to be the most powerful broadcasting executive probably in the world. There's this man saying, "Oh, it sort of has come up sort of quite soon and we didn't quite know what to do." They've known about Gary Lineker for a very long time. When the DG came into office saying, "Above all, I want to increase the idea of trust and impartiality in the BBC." Well, someone could have just said, "Oh, excuse me, DG, have you thought about your most expensive contract journalist? Yes, he's a sports journalist called Gary Lineker. Have you heard about him?" It would be absurd for them not to be told that this could be a problem. So the next time they were discussing Gary Lineker's contract, they should have said, "Oh, by the way, I just want to clear a few things up. I'm new to this job. This is a new Director General, but I do want to make quite clear that I mean this, and it does mean you will not have as much freedom as perhaps you thought you had, or perhaps people thought they had in the past."
And John, briefly, if you can, and forgive me, panel, for focusing on John, but John was at the Beeb for decades, and you really were a total hero of mine. Your analysis of the day's politics, your moments with Margaret Thatcher and others were truly iconic and memorable. Is Gary Lineker damaging the BBC as we speak?
Yeah.
And would you sack him?
He's definitely damaging the BBC. And I would just simply say, well, look, I'm sorry, you can't agree to our terms. We want you to be very, very careful in future about what you say and what you tweet. If you can't do that, I'm very sorry. We think you're a great broadcaster, but goodbye.
All right, well, there you go. Succinct, as always, from John Sargent. Also delighted to have Christopher Biggins and Rebecca Jane. What a panel tonight. They'll be back shortly. Don't forget, at 10 o'clock, I'm presenting a brand new show. It is the alternative match of the day with top pundits, plenty of opinion, but no virtue signalling. And I won't be charging £1.3 million to host the show. Your reaction to my big opinion and the thoughts of my panel, mark at gbnews.uk. Should Gary Lineker stay in post as the host of Match of the Day? Next up, are electric cars overrated? See you in 2.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone.
My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one.
Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
The countdown is on. In precisely 37 minutes, we will be making television and radio history. Gary Lineker has been suspended by the BBC. The staff of Match of the Day have gone on strike. Their show is 20 minutes long tonight. I'm giving you an hour from 10. That's right, the alternative Match of the Day in 36 and a half minutes' time. Don't be late. And we're starting at bang on 10, by the way. It's time now for this. Yes, it's time for the big question. This week, reports show that sales of electric cars have fallen, with stiff competition coming from cheaper priced and, in the view of some, more convenient options, including hybrid models and traditional petrol and diesel-engined cars. So has the bottom fallen out of the electric car market? Are electric cars all they're cracked up to be? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome Howard Cox, founder of Fair Fuel UK, and also sustainable transport journalist Rick Buhlemeyer. Rick, welcome to the show. Nice to have you on the programme. Yeah, electric cars, there's nowhere to charge them. The battery goes bad after a few years, and they're very expensive. What's the point?
Well, I mean, two very inaccurate facts to start off with. I actually charge my car at home, and it takes me roughly 20 seconds to charge my car, get home from work, plug it in, wake up the next morning fully charged, and off we go again. So I think that, if you're lucky enough to have a home charger, it is a great way to get around. And I've not met anyone that's gone electric that would go back to petrol, I'm afraid.
Rick, doesn't the range shrink over time in the way it would do on an iPhone? Because my iPhone used to work all day long a year ago. Now I get a morning out of it.
Well, Mark, firstly, with certain cars, they can do over-the-air updates nowadays, and the tech in some of these cars is absolutely phenomenal. And actually, my car, I've been driving electric for 3 years now, and did an over-the-air update overnight once, and it actually gave it more range because the car manufacturers have thought ahead of that. They've thought about the problems of battery degradation, and they made sure that that these batteries and the warranties that come with them actually make sure that you are getting what they say on the tin. I do agree, though, the cold weather does make the battery shrink, and it does make it difficult on long journeys. But bear in mind, 99% of journeys nowadays are under 100 miles anyway, and most electric cars gets at least 200 miles of range anyway.
Let me tell you that the cold weather makes a lot of things shrink. Howard Cox. I'm quite impressed by Rick Buhlemeyer there. He's pointed out that your car gets a software update. And also, let's not forget the emissions from these electric cars. Well, it's just nothing. It's fantastic for air quality.
You're absolutely right, Mark. It's good to be on your show, and I'm looking forward to a match of the day. But one of the things is, it's all very well. I mean, I think the electric vehicle is the technology, and they're great to drive. It's fantastic. And I'm getting that out of the way straight away. I'm not anti-EV. But because of the litany of huge disadvantages, combined with the huge energy prices, I'm afraid most of the traditional fossil fuel drivers, I'm afraid, are not convinced to move over. And still 97% of what's on our roads are run by petrol and diesel. And what we've got to realise is that they're expensive. There is this range anxiety. It's all very well saying, oh, I'm only 100 miles, I can do that. Oh, so if I do 110, I've got to charge and sit around for 2 hours to charge up. All sorts of practicalities. And one of my supporters has just sent me through, literally half an hour ago, about his van. He's just bought a new electric van and he's going back to diesel simply because he's got so much downtime wasting charging. He can't do any more deliveries. It's those sorts of things. So we've got to work together and start, and let's face it, with the government, with their draconian 2030 diesel petrol ban, EVs will never get actually on the road unless that ban stays in place. And I think it's very uncompetitive when there are other cleaner fuel technologies.
Quick update, the countdown clock is live. It's 28 minutes until the alternative match of the day. But Rick Buhlemeyer, listen, that's the problem with electric cars. They can't last the full 90 minutes, can they? Range anxiety and time wasted sitting around charging up your car. If we had the infrastructure, they're great, but we don't.
You're probably not wrong on a few levels there. The charging infrastructure is a bit lacking in the public network at the moment. But bear in mind, we have electric charge points everywhere. You could, if you really wanted to, plug your car into a 3-pin plug. It will take a very long time to charge. But we have things like the Zappy 7 kilowatt charger, which goes on the side of your house, and you can plug your car in. You can even share that with your neighbours. There are apps like the Co-Charger app, which enables people to share their charger. So technically, you could be charging up overnight. You could be charging up at work. There are so many different ways to charge an electric car now. It's ridiculous.
Okay.
But I do agree that the public network is an issue. I drove up to Newcastle recently, a 5 or 6 hour length journey, and one of the chargers didn't work. It had a bit of a knock-on effect. But once we got to our destination, we found a charger, no problem, and juiced up overnight.
But Rick, I'm open to your message because 13 years ago I bought a Prius, and look, it's completely battered now because I drive it very badly, but it runs great, and it's a hybrid. So I think it's great to have that element of electric, but there are pros and cons. Let's bring my panel if I can. So do stay there, Howard and Rick, and let's bring in Christopher Biggins, Rebecca Jane, and John Sargent. John, of course, not just an esteemed political journalist, but, well, quite the petrol head. John, what are you driving at the moment?
Well, I have just recently bought an electric car, a new electric car, Renault Xeon, and I noticed the day it was being delivered was February the 14th. So then I wrote an article for the Daily Telegraph saying this was my most romantic moment of buying this wonderful car. Normally with Mary, we don't go on that much about Valentine, but this was my great Valentine present, and it's been terrific, I must say. Absolutely superb little car.
Oh, well, there you go. Well, that's good to hear. Biggins, you've gone electric as well, haven't you?
I have. I've been electric for 6 years, if you pardon the expression. But I tell you what, I agree with Rick. For instance, you have to have a charger at home because he's absolutely right. You get home, you put the charger on, and the next morning you're fully charged to go off. I think it's a car only for major cities. I mean, I was going to Darlington to do pantomime at Christmas, and we were all starting to pack our little car, ready to go, and I panicked because it was a long way to Darlington and I didn't want not to find anywhere to charge. So, in fact, in the end, it cost me a fortune to get a hire car to take me there. But there are so many perks in London. For instance, you can park in Westminster for 4 hours for £1.62, and then you can extend it for another 4 hours. So that's marvellous. There's no congestion charge. It's very, very economical to run an electric car. So that is one of the pluses.
OK. The problem with parking in Westminster is you might bump into a member of Parliament. No one wants that to happen. Rebecca Jane, what are your thoughts on electric? I think you've got a bit of a gas guzzler, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm still on a Range Rover, which is about the worst thing you can say.
You didn't get the memo.
No, it's not for me. You know, we had this discussion a year ago where Edwina Curry was trying to tell me that a Tesla was £250 a month and it was a load of nonsense. And I said then, and I'm going to say it again, the country's not built for it. The infrastructure's not there. And you know what? Nothing has changed since we had that conversation in one whole year. And as somebody that lives in the countryside, it's just impossible, literally impossible. So I'm out, nothing's changing, and I don't envisage it happening anytime soon for me.
OK,
Sorry.
well the clock is against us because I can tell you now the stopwatch is live and we are precisely 28 minutes away from the alternative match of the day. But listen, a few seconds, please, to Rick and to Howard. Closing thoughts. Howard, if we don't go electric, we're going to have dirty air, we're going to have carbon emissions, and the planet is going to burn down.
What a load of old codswallop. Seriously, what's going to happen? We've got a budget coming on Wednesday, don't forget. And did you remember that Jeremy Hunt said in his autumn statement that EVs are going to be taxed? Somehow, we don't know how that's going to happen at the moment in time. And can I just say, I commissioned the CBR economic research that if we go all electric by 2030, which is what this draconian edict coming from government is forcing us to do, we are going to cost us 5 times more than the environmental benefits. Every household will have to pay £1,000 to net zero 2050 for the privilege for people to have sanctimoniously drive an electric vehicle.
OK, and with similar brevity, thank you for that, Howard, what a pro. Rick, look, you know, as I said, there are arguments for and against, but what about the finite nature of those minerals that go into car batteries and the cruel manner in which they are mined?
Well, you know, you need cobalt for refining petrol and diesel cars as well, so you could go into that. But the fact is, we need energy independence in this country. If we have to rely on other countries to provide our fuel, petrol's only going to get more expensive. We've got no control over it. It's poisonous. We need to stop burning stuff, first and foremost. And if we have energy independence and we can harness the power of the sun to give us solar power, which will effectively mean we run our cars on free solar energy all the time and battery storage, then we're absolutely laughing. And this country needs to invest in renewables right now, not yesterday, right now, and we'll be okay in the long run.
Rick, it's been great to have you on the show for the first time. I'm sorry for butchering your surname. Rick Boulamir is the sustainable transport journalist, and my good friend Howard Cox, founder of Fair Fuel UK, who is a real hero, and you'll be hearing from him a lot in the run-up to next week's budget, because Howard is always speaking up for drivers. My thanks to both gentlemen. Your reaction, Mark, at gbnews.uk. It is 26 minutes until we make television and radio history with the alternative match of the day. It costs you nothing. I'm doing it for free. It's an hour as opposed to the BBC, who are giving you 20 minutes. We've got presenters, we've got personality, and of course, goalmouth action. All of that to come. But next up, how many Gary Linekers are there in Hollywood? We'll be finding out from showbiz queen Kinsey Schofield. She's next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it. Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Patrick Christys has just been in the studio smelling fragrant, and let me tell you that the stopwatch is live, and we are precisely 22 minutes away from television and radio history. We are the People's Channel. You've been deprived of a full-length match of the day because everyone at the Beeb is on strike or sacked. So the alternative match of the day starts at 10 o'clock. Be there. Myself and Patrick, we are live at 10. We've even got rid of the news headlines because this is a story of national importance. It's time now, though, for US News with the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Hi, Kinsey.
Hi, Mark. I can confirm that Patrick Christys smells like fresh laundry and, you know, a nice sunny meadow.
His fiancée is a lucky lady. Now, can we talk about the Duke and Duchess of Sussex? Who are going to enjoy some attention at the Oscars, but possibly not for the right reasons.
That's right. The New York Post is reporting that Harry and Meghan might be on the receiving end of some brutal comedy at this Sunday's Oscar ceremony. PR experts tell the paper that recent roasts by South Park and Chris Rock have really opened up the floodgates. Now, host Jimmy Kimmel, over the last few months, we've seen him be absolutely ruthless to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. So all eyes tomorrow night will be on Kimmel to see what exactly he says about, the Mr. Todger and Mrs. Titles.
Indeed. And tell us about an Oscars misfire. What's gone wrong?
Well, which one, Mark? I mean, the Oscars went from 40 million viewers to now the 16, I believe it was last year's. The year before that, it was 10. And we know that everybody tuned in last year for the slap. But a recent YouGov survey of 2,000 movie lovers compared to, expert predictions show just how out of touch this year's ceremony might be. For instance, normal viewers, you and I, we want to see Top Gun Maverick win. We want to see Tom Cruise win Best Picture. But experts predicting that this art film, Everything Everywhere All at Once, is going to be what takes home the trophy this year. And I think it's just another example of why people are tuning out. It's typically movies that aren't necessarily watched that win.
I think that's the issue. You'll have heard about the drama around Gary Lineker, a sports presenter in this country, a former soccer star. He played for England, for Leicester, for Everton and Tottenham Hotspur. He's one of the best paid presenters in the country, Kinsey, but he's in hot water with his employers for a series of very political tweets in relation to the government's migration policy. Are there Gary Lineker types in Hollywood?
I mean, not only in Hollywood, but in news too. I think it's one of the reasons why we don't admire or speak about Dan Rather the way we would had he not gone. He really exploded during the Trump presidency. But if you want to talk specifics in Hollywood, how do you ignore Alec Baldwin, who has completely seen his brand crumble under scandal and under his outspokenness when it comes to politics? We've got John Lennon and Chrissy Teigen, who were the pop culture icons. Everybody loved them. They were the quirky couple, and they were so toxic and disruptive during the Trump presidency that people really tuned out of not only their music, but their entertainment projects. Katy Perry during the 2016 campaign was very outspoken and in support of Hillary Clinton. I've forgiven her. Solely due to her wardrobe. I think that there are too many to count. Deborah Messing was another actress that I absolutely adored, but was so hateful during the Trump presidency. Susan Sarandon was blacklisted in Hollywood for her support of Bernie Sanders. So I think it's a very long list.
It is, and it really surprises me. I think there are echoes of my big opinion earlier in the show, in which I said that there are a lot of celebrities speaking out in support of Gary Lineker, this British presenter, and it's my view that the media elites are just out of touch with British public opinion. I wonder whether that's true in America, that the Hollywood elites are out of touch with real Americans who are struggling with the cost of living. And I do remember the 2016 presidential elections, in which Hillary Clinton welcomed on stage a variety of Hollywood stars. It didn't seem to do her any favours. In some ways, it was a turn-off for voters.
Yeah, I remember Lady Gaga performed at something. I do think that people sit back and go, I don't care. I don't care who you're voting for, because you can pay your rent on time, and I'm struggling to do that. So yeah, it does just remind people that they're in a very different position financially and morally in a lot of these cases. And, Busy Phillips is an actress here. I don't know if you're familiar with her work. She was on a really great show called Freaks and Geeks. They just, the abortion stories, they start trying to trend things like that are they upset people emotionally. I mean, morally and emotionally and financially and everything, we start to realize that we don't have a lot in common with these people, that we fill their pockets full of money every time we buy their movie or go sit down in a theater and watch them.
Listen, Kinsey, you're so right. Cannot wait to see you in May for the King's coronation. You're coming to the UK, and you will be our star guest on Mark Dolan tonight. My thanks to the brilliant Kinsey Schofield. Check out her podcast, To Die For Daily, and her popular website of the same name. Kinsey, see you in a week's time. Look, this is really challenging my mathematics, but it is 16 minutes until the alternative match of the day. It's an hour. It's myself and Patrick Christys and a host of top names giving you the highlights from the Premier League this afternoon. Lots to get through. Don't go anywhere. Next up, have the BBC brought this drama on themselves? We'll discuss that with a top former newspaper editor. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Well, it is precisely 12 minutes until we make television and radio history. We are the People's Channel, and we are giving you the alternative match of the day because the Beeb have gone on strike, and we are here to deliver an hour of top football guests celebrating the beautiful game and the most watched sporting league in the world, the English Premier League. Now, the BBC's Saturday football schedule was ripped to shreds today after a number of BBC pundits stepped down from presenting in solidarity with Gary Lineker. Lineker was suspended from presenting Match of the Day after his controversial tweet on the government's asylum policy breached BBC guidelines. But is this impartiality row one of Lineker's making or of the BBC's? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome media mogul, former national newspaper editor, of course, the founder of TalkSport, many other projects. He's worth a few bob. It's Kelvin McKenzie. Hi, Kelvin.
Hi there. Good evening.
Have the Beeb brought this on themselves, Kelvin?
Well, actually, I'm delighted that this moment has come. It was quite clear that Lineker was basically giving a V sign to their own rules. You try that in your own company. You say to Angelos, you know, I've decided to do X, and he says, don't do it. See how long you're on air. And that's the same whether you're running for Marks and Spencer or any company, BT, anything. So he's crossed the line, and he also makes it clear that he's going to cross the line again. So there's no question of him coming back, because if he comes back, then the Director General will have to go, because the row will be so enormous and the strength will have moved from the management to the employee, actually a freelance employee at that. So his career at the BBC is now over. And the other thing that I dislike that's going on right now, I don't know whether you've noticed that in the unpopular papers tonight, you'll see a suggestion that Tim Davie will have to go. He won't have to go. What I do suspect will happen is that the chairman will have to go. I think that Sharp, who got his job after arranging a loan for Boris Johnson through a relative, and then he gets the job, his position was untenable anyway, and now it's being used against him. And so I think that's over. But for me, I'm enjoying this tremendously. The idea that people are all walking out on strike, these guys are all making $400,000-500,000 a year on our money, right? They're all walking out, and anybody gives us stuff, all Davey has to do is just tough them out. And by the way, if they all go, fantastic. The cost base of the BBC will have come down, and we want the cost base to come down. After all, they're firing people by the 100 anyway. You know, the thing that the idea that we can't get along. Right, 25 years ago, this may have been an issue. Today, we've got BT Sport, Talk Sport. We've got Sky, a massive sporting behemoth, you know. We can get on without them. You want to know what the results are? I don't know whether anybody's seen one of these before. You know, we have a phone. You know, so the bottom line on all this is that it doesn't matter what the BBC does, except in one respect. I have to pay, you have to pay 159 quid, and therefore we are funding people like Lineker, actually, to tell us things we don't want to hear. So were he to come back, that is it. I am not paying, and I have, you know, I've only got 50,000 followers on Twitter, but they will all join in. Nobody's paying. So see how Lineker gets paid when our lot, those people who object to what's being said, right, finally say we're not funding the BBC anymore.
I would recommend you give Kelvin a follow on Twitter. Kelvin, I loved your viral video about this story that went out today. It's touched a raw nerve. Let's bring in a couple of BBC lifers, Kelvin, into this conversation. The brilliant political broadcaster John Sargent, radio and TV legend Christopher Biggins, and the deputy leader of UKIP, Rebecca Jane. Biggins, do you feel, as I do and Kelvin does, that the BBC have been asleep at the wheel on this one, unaware of the colossal damage this is doing to their reputation?
Without any question, I think they've been like this for a long time, I'm afraid. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, which has exploded in their face. And they will have to do something very, very stringent and strong to combat it. If they don't, they're out.
Yeah, well, I think that's the issue. Rebecca Jane, where now for the BBC? Because their critics have been gifted a massive stick with which to beat them this week.
Yeah, they certainly have, and thank goodness for that. It's about time too. I've never been a fan of the BBC. They've just got a mainstream agenda that I don't want to listen to, and it's absolute load of nonsense. Can't wait until the day that we do absolutely defund them. Channels like this, obviously wonderful station, are beating them and others for a reason. Because, you know, we're all tired of it. We're sick of it. We're sick of a mainstream agenda. We want to hear what real people and real thoughts are. And they don't represent two sides of a story, ever.
John Sargent, I know you will defend the Beeb, and I've got to say there's some amazing radio and TV that's made, documentaries, the World Service, Radio 4, the news coverage. A lot of it is good. But the licence fee can't be long for this world.
Well, no, the chances are it probably will have to change, but the idea that this would be a better country without the BBC, now, wait a moment, it would be a worse country. And I think if you ask people that question right across the country, they know how much they appreciate all parts of the BBC, perhaps in different ways, and they can have different views. But for me, it was still most of my adult life I spent working for the BBC, and I'm still enormously proud of it.
OK. Final thoughts, Kelvin. How do you see this playing out? You don't think that Gary Lineker will return to the BBC. What of the near to medium-term future of the organisation? Are they in trouble?
Well, there's a bit of a row going on, but honestly, as long as they tough it out a few days, slowly people will start saying, I tell you what, I'd rather be on the telly than not on the telly, and on that basis, the game will continue. What should happen is that Lineker should say, thank you very much for your support to everybody around him. This is my battle. I don't need any help. Please go back to work. Then the issue will be solved.
Kelvin, great to have you back on the show. We'll catch up soon. And thank you to John Sargent, Rebecca Jane and Christopher Biggins. The alternative match of the day is next.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, at 9:30 on Sunday morning when two top Tories give me their reaction to the government's Stop the Boats policy. I'll be speaking to former Deputy Prime Minister Damien Green, as well as the former Justice Secretary Robert Buckland. And Jonathan Sumption, the former Supreme Court Justice and leading lockdown sceptic, will give me his reaction to the lockdown files. All that and more with me, Camilla Tominey, this Sunday morning from 9:30.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel, sort of find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236,
And YouView, Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Thomas.